There are moments in life when everything feels still, when the prayers seem unanswered, when the silence feels heavier than the storm. You've been waiting, you've been believing, you've been holding on even when it hurt. And today, I need you to hear this, not as noise, not as motivation, but as a divine interruption in your life. God says it's actually happening right now. Let it sink in. Not tomorrow, not next year, not when you feel ready. Right now, even in your confusion, He is moving. Even in your delay, He is working. Even in your weakness, His power is being revealed. There was a man who thought God had forgotten him. Days turned into months, and months into years. But what he didn't see was that behind the silence, God was aligning everything perfectly. And when the moment came, it didn't just change his situation, it changed his entire destiny. I don't know who this message is for, but if your heart has been heavy, if your faith has been tested, if you've been crying in silence, this is your confirmation. God is not late, God is not distant, and God has not forgotten you. Because what you've been praying for is already being set in motion. So don't give up now. Don't lose faith now, because heaven is moving and your miracle is already happening. Right now, in this very moment, even if you cannot see it, even if you cannot feel it, God is already moving in your life. Not later, not someday, not when everything finally makes sense. He is moving now. The problem is, most people expect God to move in ways that are obvious, loud, and immediate. But often, His greatest works begin in silence, in stillness, in places where human eyes cannot yet recognize His hand. You may be looking at your situation and thinking nothing has changed. The same struggles, the same worries, the same unanswered prayers seem to be standing right in front of you. But what you don't see is what God is doing behind the scenes. While you are waiting, He is arranging. While you are doubting, He is aligning. While you are questioning, He is preparing something greater than what you asked for. There are moments when life feels paused, like everything has come to a standstill. You pray, but there's no immediate answer. You hope, but there's no visible result. In those moments, it's easy to assume that God is distant or inactive. But the truth is, those are often the moments when He is working the most. Just because you cannot see movement does not mean there is no movement. Just because you cannot hear His voice does not mean He is silent. Think about the seed planted in the ground. When it is fast buried, it looks like nothing is happening. From the outside, it seems lifeless, hidden beneath the soil. But underneath, something powerful is taking place. Roots are forming, growth is beginning, transformation is happening in a way that cannot yet be seen. In the same way, God is working beneath the surface of your life, in areas you cannot yet touch or understand. You might feel like you are in a waiting season, but a waiting season is never a wasted season. Every second of your waiting is filled with divine purpose. God is positioning people, opening doors you cannot see yet, closing paths that would have harmed you, and preparing blessings that require perfect timing. If everything happened when you first asked for it, you might not have been ready to receive it. Or it might not have been as complete as what God is preparing now. Sometimes God moves by removing things before He adds anything new. He clears away what no longer belongs, even when it hurts, even when it feels confusing. Relationships may shift, opportunities may disappear, plans may fall apart. But what feels like loss is often protection. What feels like an ending is often the beginning of something greater being set into motion. There is also a deeper work happening inside you. While God is moving around you, He is also moving within you. He is strengthening your faith, building your patience, shaping your character, and preparing your heart for what is coming. The person you are becoming is just as important as the blessing you are about to receive. Because if God gave you everything right now without preparing you, it might not last, or it might not bring the peace you are truly seeking. You may not feel strong, but God is strengthening you. You may not feel ready, but God is preparing you. You may not see a way forward, but God is already making one. He is opening doors that no one can shut and closing doors that no one can open. He is working in places you haven't even thought to look, in ways you could never have planned. Even in your quiet moments, even in your tears, even in your questions, God is present. He sees every struggle, every doubt, every hidden pain, and He is not ignoring any of it. He is using it, shaping it, and turning it into something meaningful. Nothing you are going through is being wasted. Every detail is part of a bigger picture that is still unfolding. The timing of God is not random. It is precise, intentional, and perfect. What feels like a delay to you is actually a process. What feels like stillness is actually preparation. What feels like nothing is actually everything being set in place at the right time. So even if your situation looks the same today as it did yesterday, something is different. Even if you cannot point to a visible change, something has already begun. God has already started what He promised. The movement has already begun. The process is already in motion, and the outcome is already being shaped in ways you cannot yet fully see or understand. Delay is one of the most misunderstood parts of faith. When something takes longer than expected, the natural reaction is to assume that it isn't going to happen. The mind starts filling with questions. Doubts begin to rise, and the heart slowly grows tired. You prayed, you believed, you trusted, and yet nothing seems to be changing. But what feels like denial is often just a delay, and delay does not mean that God has said no. There is a difference between God saying not yet and God saying no. But in the waiting, those two can feel exactly the same. The silence can feel like rejection. The pause can feel like abandonment. But God does not operate according to human timing. His perspective is higher. His understanding is deeper. And His plan is far more complete than anything we can see in the moment. Sometimes the delay is about preparation. You may be asking for something big, something life-changing, something that requires more than just desire. It requires readiness. God sees not only what you want, but who you need to become to handle it. If He were to give it to you too soon, it might overwhelm you, or it might not stay in your life the way it is meant to. So while you are asking for the blessing, God is preparing the person who will receive it. There are also times when the delay is about alignment. There are people, opportunities, and circumstances that need to come together in a specific way. You may only see your part of the story, but God sees every detail, every connection, every moment that must line up perfectly. One small shift at the wrong time could change everything. So He waits, not because He is withholding, but because He is ensuring that when it happens in the right way. Delay can also be protection. There are things you have wanted that if given too early could have caused harm. There are doors you wished would open that would have led you into the wrong place with the wrong people at the wrong time. What feels like a missed opportunity may actually be God guarding your future. What feels like disappointment may actually be divine intervention. In the waiting, something powerful is happening inside you. Faith is being tested, but it is also being strengthened. Patience is being developed, and character is being shaped. It is easy to trust when everything is happening quickly and smoothly. But real faith is built in the delay, in the moments where you have to believe without seeing, where you have to hold on without understanding. The delay also reveals what is truly in your heart. It shows whether your faith is based on immediate results or on a deeper trust in God's plan. It exposes fear, doubt, and impatience, but it also creates space for growth, for surrender, and for a stronger connection with God. The longer the wait, the deeper the transformation can become. There are stories throughout life where people thought it was over, where they believed their chance had passed, where they assumed the answer was no, only to discover later that everything was simply delayed. And when it finally happened, it made sense why it couldn't have happened earlier. The timing, the circumstances, the person they had become, it all aligned in a way that could not have been forced. The hardest part about delay is that it requires you to keep going without clear evidence. It asks you to trust when there are no visible signs, to believe when everything around you suggests otherwise. It requires a kind of strength that is quiet but powerful, a kind of faith that doesn't depend on immediate proof. You may feel like you have been waiting too long. You may feel like you have done everything you know to do, and still nothing has changed. But delay does not erase the promise. Time does not cancel what God has already set in motion. What has been spoken over your life does not lose its power just because it hasn't happened yet. Even now, in the middle of your waiting, things are unfolding. What seems slow to you is still progress. What seems like nothing is still something. Every day, every moment is bringing you closer to what has already been prepared. The delay is not empty. It is full of purpose, full of movement, full of unseen activity that is leading you exactly where you are meant to be. Sometimes the delay stretches longer than you expected, and it begins to feel heavy. It begins to feel like a burden you are carrying. But even in that wait, there is meaning. Even in that stretch, there is growth. Even in that silence, there is a voice, one that is guiding, shaping, and preparing everything for the right moment. Faith is often strongest, not when everything is clear, but when everything is quiet. There are seasons in life where God feels close and His presence feels undeniable. And then there are seasons where everything becomes still. The prayers seem to echo back without response. The direction feels uncertain, and the reassurance you once felt begins to fade. It is in these moments, in the silence, where faith is truly tested and deeply formed. Silence can be uncomfortable. It can feel like distance, like absence, like something is missing. You may begin to wonder if God is listening, if He sees what you are going through, if He cares about the details of your life. The mind starts to fill the silence with doubt, creating questions that have no immediate answers. But silence does not mean God has stepped away. Silence does not mean He is no longer involved. Sometimes silence is where the most important work is happening. When everything is loud and obvious, it is easy to believe. When answers come quickly and clearly, faith feels natural. But when there is no visible movement, when there is no clear sign, faith becomes a choice. It becomes something you hold on to, not because of what you see, but because of what you trust. This kind of faith is deeper, stronger, and more enduring because it is not dependent on circumstances. In the silence, God is inviting you into a different kind of relationship with Him. One that is not based only on feelings or immediate results, but on trust. A trust that says, even when I don't understand, even when I don't feel anything, even when everything seems uncertain, I still believe that you are here. This kind of faith is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, steady, and persistent. There is a refining that happens in silence. It strips away distractions, removes dependence on constant reassurance, and brings you face to face with what you truly believe. It challenges you to go beyond surface level faith and into something deeper. It asks you to continue walking even when the path is not fully visible. To keep praying even when the answers are delayed. To keep hoping even when nothing seems to be changing. Sometimes the silence is not because God is absent, but because He is teaching you to listen differently. Not just for words, but for His presence. Not just for clear instructions, but for subtle guidance. In the stillness, there are moments of clarity that can be missed in the noise. There are lessons that can only be learned when everything else is quiet. It is also in the silence that your inner strength begins to grow. You learn patience, not as an idea, but as a lived experience. You learn perseverance, not because everything is easy, but because you choose to keep going despite the difficulty. You learn to stand firm even when your emotions are uncertain. This kind of strength cannot be developed in comfort. It is formed in the quiet, in the waiting, in the unknown. You may feel like nothing is happening, but that is not the truth. Growth is taking place beneath the surface. Just like roots grow deeper in the ground before anything appears above it, your faith is developing in ways that are not immediately visible. And when the time comes, that hidden growth will support something much greater. There are moments when the silence feels long, when it stretches beyond what you expected, when it tests your limits. In those moments, it is important to remember that silence is not permanent. It is a season, not a conclusion. It has a purpose and it will not last forever. What you are learning in this season will prepare you for what comes next. Faith in the silence means choosing to believe that God is still working, even when you cannot see the evidence. It means holding on to His promises even when they feel distant. It means trusting that the same God who has been faithful before will be faithful again, even if the timing and the process are different from what you imagined. You may not feel confident every day. You may have moments where doubt tries to take over. But faith is not about never doubting. It is about continuing to believe despite the doubt. It is about returning to trust again and again, even when it is difficult. In the silence, there is a quiet assurance that begins to form. Not from external signs, but from within. A sense that you are not alone, that you are being guided, that there is something greater at work. It may not be loud, it may not be obvious, but it is real. And as you continue to walk through the silence with faith, that quiet assurance becomes stronger, more steady, and more unshakable. There comes a moment in life when everything begins to shift, even if it doesn't look dramatic at first. A breakthrough is not always loud, not always sudden, not always something the world immediately notices. Sometimes it begins quietly, like a small change in direction, a subtle opening, a feeling that something is different. And yet, that moment carries the weight of everything you have been waiting for. You may have spent a long time in a place that felt stagnant, praying, hoping, trying to stay strong while nothing seemed to move. It can feel like you are standing in the same spot, watching time pass, wondering when it will finally be your turn. But a breakthrough does not arrive randomly. It comes at the point where preparation meets timing, where everything that has been building beneath the surface begins to come together. There are things you have gone through that did not make sense at the time. Challenges that stretched you, moments that drained you, situations that tested your faith and your patience. It may have felt like those experiences were holding you back, like they were obstacles standing in your way. But in reality, they were shaping you, strengthening you, and preparing you for what is now beginning to unfold. A breakthrough often starts internally before it shows up externally. There is a shift in your mindset, a new level of clarity, a deeper sense of peace that begins to take root. You start to see things differently. What once discouraged you no longer has the same power. What once confused you begins to make sense. It is as if something inside you has aligned, creating space for something new to enter your life. At the same time, changes begin to happen around you. Opportunities that were not there before begin to appear. Doors that once seemed closed begin to open, sometimes in unexpected ways. Connections form, ideas develop, paths reveal themselves. It may not all happen at once, but there is a noticeable movement, a sense that things are no longer stuck. It is important to understand that a breakthrough is not just about receiving something new. It is also about releasing what no longer belongs. There are habits, thoughts, and attachments that cannot move forward with you into this new season. Letting go can be difficult, especially when you have held on to something for a long time. But every release creates space for something better, something more aligned with where you are going. There may also be a moment of hesitation. When things finally begin to change, it can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. You have become used to waiting, used to things being a certain way. Stepping into something new requires courage. It requires trust, not only in God, but also in the growth that has taken place within you. You may not feel completely ready, but readiness is not always about feeling. It is about stepping forward anyway. A breakthrough does not mean that everything suddenly becomes perfect. There may still be challenges. There may still be uncertainties. But there is a difference now. You are no longer in the same place. You are moving, progressing, stepping into something that was once out of reach. The perspective changes. The strength changes. The way you respond to difficulties changes. There is also a sense of confirmation that begins to settle in. A realization that the waiting was not in vain. That the delays had purpose. That the silence was not empty. You begin to see how everything connects, how each step, each moment, each experience played a role in bringing you to this point. What once felt like confusion begins to form a clear picture. As this breakthrough unfolds, it is important to remain grounded, to stay connected to the faith that carried you through the waiting, to remember the lessons learned in the difficult moments, because the same trust, patience, and perseverance that sustained you before will continue to guide you as you move forward. You may not have all the answers yet. You may not see the full picture, but there is a clear sense that something has changed, that something has begun. The weight that once held you down feels lighter. The path that once seemed blocked feels open. The hope that once felt distant feels closer, more real. And in this moment, whether it is quiet or noticeable, whether it is just beginning or already unfolding, there is a shift that cannot be undone. A movement that continues forward, carrying with it everything that has been built, everything that has been prepared, everything that is now ready to take its place in your life.